I would say, revolutionary things that happened in India over the last decade. Something that I have been very lucky to be part of. And today, for the first time, I'm having this honor to be with some of these people who have been contributing to that success. So today's panel we have is the cashless. I'll say the rest. This is right. Cashless catalyst, the fintech boom in India and beyond. Before I get into the panel, I do want to introduce our panelists from my right to left. I want to introduce Mr. Bharat Kaushal, MD Hitachi, Varda Taneja, Vice President, Invest India, Antonia Martina Durich, Swiss entrepreneur, politician, and a global chef. Reena Sundar,
Fancy meeting you here.
board member, The Modern India, and founder, Modern India. And our contributor to the entire ecosystem of the payments, with very high regard, Mr. Amitabh Khandelwal, General Manager, Department of Payments and Settlement Systems, Reserve Bank of India. Sir and ladies, thank you so much for joining us this morning and afternoon. I know it's been a busy schedule for all of you, so welcome again to the panel. I do want to start with first talking about what does cashless mean, and I would like to start with Mr. Amitabh Khandelwal to explain us what's RBI's view on what cashless catalyst mean. So why don't you give us some insight about what does that mean?
Sure. Thank you very much. And first of all, let me extend my sincere thanks for inviting me to this panel. And panel which is very relevant to what we are doing day and night. Day and night because we have 24/7 payment systems. Whether you call the customer system or any FT or RTGS, any payment systems, those are 24/7. So now talking about the exact term cashless. If you see our the stance of the RBI, we talk of less cash rather than cashless because we feel cashless is practically not possible. And even the countries which have moved to near cashless, they also now understand the importance of having some cash in the economy. So, why it is very important to clarify this is that if you see the recent measures taken by RBI, it can be a bit confusing. On one hand, we are promoting digital payments, and on the other hand, we do allow free withdrawals over ATMs. We facilitate cash at pause. We say that now we are promoting UPI for cash withdrawal at ATMs. So why is it so? Because if you suppose you restrict the number of transactions that you can do over ATM to one or two in a month, what will happen is that people will start hoarding the cash. And that is something which goes against less cash approach that we have. So it is important that to give customer a comfort that whenever required, cash is available, so that she doesn't carry cash with her, and that is how she will be forced to do more digital transactions. So our official stance is less cash rather than cashless.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, just to give you a context, everybody, what are we talking about? I mean, just to give you a volume check. The 2023 volumes on UPI was an annual number of $1.7 trillion. That's about approximately more than 2,500 transactions a second. So the numbers are not trivial at all. And it is probably, if UPI were to become the biggest fintech company, that would be, by numbers, absolutely be the number one company in the world. So let's talk about, the entire idea of the financial revolution, and not just UPI, but UPI is obviously the cornerstone of the milestone here. But I want to start with Mr. Kaushal. And I want to go into a little bit about the digital payment revolution and extend my question to all the panelists once we get your comments. The question is examining how India has become a hotbed for digital payments innovation, exploring the transformative impact of mobile wallets, UPI, and other cutting solutions. What is your observations on how Indian digital payment systems have evolved?
So let me start by saying that it's a very unique definition of cashless in India. I mean, rest of the world, you understand that cash has moved to digital transactions. And I say this with a sense of responsibility. We are amongst the largest ATM operators in the country. We have more than 30%. We have a joint venture with State Bank of India for all the digital payments. And we've also got the new UPI ATM. That cash has doubled since demonetization of the economy. At the same time, India was connected only 42% to the organized financial sector in 2014. We now host about 60% of the world's transactions. And this is when we are so underleveraged as an economy that once we start doing that, maybe it's hosting a billion transactions a day. That is the volume we are talking about. So the infrastructure, the payment and settlement mechanism, thanks to the Reserve Bank of India for having such a progressive approach and being a provider of the rest of the ecosystem between banks, between individuals, systems, to run so smoothly. I mean, we are saying that it's not just about the merchant POS machine where you swipe the card. It's about offering EMIs there. It's about offering foreign exchange transactions there at the point where the transaction is occurring. To doing B2B services in addition to the B2C of the transaction, to doing inventory management. There is a whole gamut of services which digital is changing we do city gas and water supply in the city of Delhi. And the last mile payment is just an added extension of the transaction to the asset management that was being done also with some other Hitachi equipment. And similarly, 45% of national highway tolls or the 20-year fare collection of Delhi Metro, which is amongst the 3 largest metros in the world, is with us. So when you're examining, you're rewriting a script, both in terms of capacity, affordability, scale, and you have to do it with such speed because people are embracing change with that speed. So we are ourselves every day going back to the drawing board and going to the Reserve Bank of India and State Bank of India, which is otherwise the huge offline presence, maybe the largest offline presence, is itself redefining its identity to become the topmost player in the online revolution. And we are very excited to be part of that.
Thank you so much for the insightful infrastructure. And I did not realize Hitachi was such a big contributor on the infrastructure side. Now, I want to bring that same question to Vardha, because Vardha, you have been with Invest India and you have seen this journey very closely, more from not the development side of things, but more from adoption and the numbers that get reported up. So what is your perspective of how this evolution happened and what did you see the bureaucracy and the government support in providing this enablement?
So I think we spoke about cashless, we were talking about transactions, but let's take a step back to see how did this all really pan out, right? So it's something known as the Indian digital stack, which is a very popular phrase in the Indian context. What did we do? What did our government do? We started with first creating a unique digital identity for the entire population of the country. So we have 1.4 billion people of our country who have a unique digital identity with which they are associated. That was step number 1. Step number 2 was to enable these people to have access to be able to make these cashless transactions, to be a part of the formal economy by helping them open bank accounts. So there was a Jan Dhan Yojana scheme which was introduced where we had bank accounts open for all the people. So you have a digital identity, you have a bank account associated with it, and then the third wheel in this whole place is the adoption of mobile phones. So we have one of the largest mobile phone adoption rate in the world. I mean, if you go from households, whether it's urban or rural, you'll see each and every person holds a smartphone in their hand. In fact, if you go towards the rural areas, people don't have one, but in many cases, two smartphones in their hand. And that is the tool to enable them to get access to that technology, to get access to the digital public infrastructure which is being created for them. This ecosystem that got created actually enabled the people to be able to get direct benefit transfers from the government, the digital public infrastructure that they created. So today, more than $300 billion worth of direct public transfers are taking place from this infrastructure that has been created to the people directly, which is one of the biggest success stories of the Indian digital public infrastructure that has been created. And this is one of the cornerstones that has helped people kind of move forward towards the whole cashless economy, digital payments, UPI being one of the biggest cornerstones of that. The maximum number of digital transactions today that are taking place on UPI. And if I was to put this for you in perspective, last year, from December 22 to December 23, there has been a 54% increase in the UPI transactions that have taken place. And in a matter of 1 year alone, a 54% increase just speaks volumes of the kind of growth that we can also see in the near future, because the Indian consumer today, the person who is paying, the one who has the power to pay, is an aspirational consumer. He is hungry to be be at par with all the developed economies, and is wanting to, get the right kind of standard of living, lifestyle, and is actually spending. He's a spender and he wants to get access to all of these things, and a lot of that is through the digital transactions that he's making.
Yeah, I think I contributed a lot to that 54% in the last year. So, and most of us have who live in India. So I do want to now get into a little bit of technicality while we are establishing the panel. And Tony, I'm going to come back to you in a second about the inclusion and the global collaboration aspect. But before we do that, I do want to talk a little bit about the technicality of what happened under the hood, to make this happen. This is a master stroke, right? Like somebody told me, how can you digitize a country when people are not technology savvy? They have never been to schools. They have never done education. They don't have access. But when it comes to financial, boom, we just killed it as a country. So I do want to learn a little bit about how this all transpired under the hood. Like what was happening. So, Amitabh, sir, you saw this action firsthand. Do you give us love for you to give us some insight about how this happened?
Yeah, Jam Trinity, the Jandan, Aadhaar and mobile that already discussed, that is one of the aspects. And it is much talked about everywhere. But there is one more very important factor which has contributed to this. That is the enactment of a separate Payment and Settlement Systems Act. So it came into force in 2008, and that has, if you see the revolution that has happened after that only. NPCI came into existence after that. Earlier, what was happening is that as Reserve Bank of India, we were not very comfortable with the involvement of private sector because we were not having sufficient teeth, we were not having sufficient act or the legal mandate behind it, and we were using RBI Act for all these purposes. It was PSS Act enactment was one of the very important aspects, which led to this revolution, which led to creation of NPCI, and then so many payment systems. Like even if we talk of UPI, but much before that, 6 years before that, we came up with the fast payment system IMPS in 2010, and we were, I think, third or fourth country across the globe to have a fast payment system. So it started with that. It started with so many AEPS, the Aadhaar-based payment systems, the NACH, and a host of the FASTag related NETC. So many things came up, and ultimately we landed at the world's biggest fast payment system, the UPI, and that shows the innovation and the versatility that we have in the payment system area. We are having a very good fast payment system. Despite that, we innovated further. We created another one. And that is something very rare. There are very few countries across the globe as of now who are having more than one fast payment system. So it is like continuous innovation, because we felt like now we have mobile penetration became the biggest enabler there. We felt like IMPS is not, it is more like an internet-based fast payment system rather than the mobile-based thing. And that is how UPI came into existence. And everyone knows that it has really changed the landscape, not only the domestic landscape, but also the globally. Now we are going global with UPI, and there have been two very important, what do you say, the factors which has given impetus to this adoption of UPI and digital payments as a whole. One was the demonetization that happened, and also the COVID-related the restrictions and the problems that people face. And we were lucky to have payment systems in place to take care of the payments, the non-physical, non-cash payments in our country, which many other countries struggled during COVID period. So all these factors they added, and mainly we are not satisfied with what we have. We are continuously innovating. That is the reason why we have second fast payment system, which is the largest fast payment system now across the globe.
And maybe I could add something because I love this question.
Sure.
So another point is that with Adhar, they actually asked 4 questions only to onboard all those people. And the question were name, address, and birth date, and something else, right? So the goal was to onboard all those people because we had more than 30%, which were unbanked before we started that in 2008, was to limit the entry goal, border as good as possible. And I think they succeeded because here in Switzerland, we have studies who said that until 2060, India would need to kind of accelerate the banking sector and to onboard all those people. But what we now have is only 11% in India which are left unbanked. So this was a huge growth, which basically to this perfect strategy worked out.
No, absolutely. So you have.
I just wanted to add that, first of all, the basic tenet of Digital India was open access. So it was limitless in terms of just saying it's available to everybody. Everybody can immediately start and get onboarded with it. And then the Reserve Bank payment and settlement revolution, and I say this with some sense of a very strong appreciation that the issuer side and the acquirer side in the value chain were all being incentivized. I mean, if you look at it, now we've built 14 languages. We've got KYC over voice. So there are very different new ways in which you're capturing more and more transactions, and common denominators like education and health, which cut across urban and rural landscape in India. They're all moving with parents and teachers and students and everyone, or the Ayushman Bharat ID, all of that operation is happening through pharma shops, insurance claims, primary health centers. That's what has been responsible, in addition to what Amitabh said.
No, absolutely. And in fact, I'm very interested to also learn what is UPI 2.0 and 3.0 that will follow. But I do want to point out a quick fact, interesting fact, that India has shared its UPI technology with many countries, including France, Australia, Singapore, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and the list goes on. So it's not just open for everybody in India, but the idea is to, I guess, have a global domination. But point being, the idea is to create an open financial system, like Mr. Kaushal is saying. Now, I do want to, when I say that, I wanted to point out the global collaboration opportunity that we have. I mean, we have 2 panelists here, one from Swiss entrepreneur and also Norway. I do want to talk about in what ways in India, and Rena's view, collaborating with many other nations in the fintech space, and what are the potential benefits and challenges associated with fostering international partnerships.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Does it work? First of all, I will thank you for inviting me to this very interesting panel, and thank you for your questions. So much interesting has been said about the India story, and Norway and the Norwegian banking system are looking eagerly to India. And actually the Indian companies like Infosys, like TCS, they are working to develop the Norwegian banking system. So when we do online payments, we know that there are Indians who have developed this. So Indians add a lot of value when it comes to the banking sector in Norway. But let's take a step back. We are all gathered here at the World Economic Forum, where the topic is trust. Trust in a fractured world. And I don't know of any other example that is better than this revolutionary cashless payment that has been able to build trust among classes, among countries. And we also see that during the war with Russia and Ukraine, suddenly we face different kind of challenges, both at the macro global level, but also how to deal with the challenges coming when it comes to such a conflict. Globally, we see that 40% are using cashless payments, whether it's going to shopping, or they use cards, or they use phone or internet banking. And I was happy to hear the sample examples that were mentioned, both from the gentleman on this side, but also by Vardha, how Aadhaar card made Indians have an ID, and that is a revolutionary. And in Norway, I see that also at state level, they make it a point to invite prominent persons. We just had Nikhil Nandagani coming over to talk about this revolution, because they are like, how can India do it? 800 million Indians are already online, and it's such a success story that must be reinforced. So I would really advise you guys to come over to Norway. I promise you there will be an audience there who will be very interested in how is India decoding and doing this. So I don't know if I answered your questions, but that was at least what I wanted to add.
No, thank you. And in fact, I do want to take this question to Antonia and get her opinion about you being a Swiss entrepreneur, and you probably are looking at startups in the space. What is the global opportunity here for India to collaborate with countries like even Switzerland?
Thank you, and thank you for being here today. So I'm a senator at the World Business Angel Investment Forum, and this is a global organization which strives to foster financial inclusivity around the globe. And there, I mean, not only, of course, India, but also other countries, they really try to collaborate on a global scale to accelerate progress and change faster. And if we ask about India directly, I had the pleasure to work with the 109th unicorn, Cyber 365 together. I also met the founders of the 105th unicorn from India. So what I can tell is about your culture. I really admire how you push your entrepreneurs and how you make an ecosystem and build an ecosystem that goes back to your digital initiative, which the government has launched, as well as to the startup initiative, which your government has launched. So what I want to say is, I think that India has the potential of becoming, until let's say 2070, from the GDP, place number 2, just because you think in ecosystems. And it's the same, like, right, with what we have discussed before. I mean, you have added 350 banks to your system, and that's not an easy task to do. And I think even Switzerland and our financial institutions, they should look to India, look up to India, and kind of try to collaborate with you on this. So from my perspective, I love what is happening, and I'm really honored to be part of this.
I would like to chime in here.
Sure.
Because it's so true. I have been following Norway, India for 10 years. I'm based in Norway. And every third year when I go to India, India has changed. Because India is becoming younger. India has 414 million millennials. And when we were talking about being tech savvy, when I tell my friends in Norway that, my mommy's and daddy's or aunties in India, they are damn tech savvy, because India is a very family-oriented culture, and Mommyji, she cannot be on the phone without calling her grandchildren in the US or London or WhatsApping them. So even in that way, one thing are the millennials and the young spirit that India has to drive with all the aspirations the young Indians have. But I must also applaud the elderly generation for being damn tech savvy, because they want to be connected with all the family members. Yes.
So speaking on that, I want to take this back to Vardha and Amitabh sir. Like, you have seen this adoption closely. And I want to talk about inclusion. I want to know, can you share a success story or initiative where fintech in India has significantly contributed to the financial inclusion, reaching previously underserved populations? So, any experiences, stories that you have in mind that would sort of signify the impact of this movement?
I think the biggest consequence of the entire digital payments boom has been the e-commerce industry flourishing the way that it has in the country. And in line with that, DPIIT Ministry of Commerce has come out with one of their flagship initiatives in this line, which is ONDC. ONDC is going to be a game changer for actually getting people included as a part of the formal economy, whether it's a kirana store selling online on this platform, or some lady who is sitting in a village of rural India and probably weaving local crafts and be able to get access to a platform where she can sell and get financially, independent. I think that is one of the biggest revolutionary things that is happening in the Indian economy in this space.
Amitabh, sir.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with this. But what is the basic feature? Now, again, it comes to open sourcing. It comes to open architecture. So even ONDC is an example of that, wherein it's like plug and play. You have a platform ready, you just attach to it and you get it and carry on your business. So, as it was pointed out earlier also, open architecture and open sourcing is the biggest reason for this. But talking specifically of the fintech, which has really revolutionized, I don't think there is any better example than again the UPI, the NPCI for that purpose. It's a fintech.
Yes.
You don't have, you don't need any other example for that purpose. It has helped in financial inclusion, it has helped in digital inclusion. Now, with the eKYC facility available now, it is this digital journey is taking care of the entire chain. Like you go on board digitally, you transact digitally, with everything. Like now, even Reserve Bank of India in collaboration with RBI Innovation Hub, we have come up with a public finance platform now, which takes care of the even the finance need also through the entire digital journey. There is no single bit of documentation required for the loan being given to the applicant. So this is like you are integrating the system, and that also is an example of open architecture. It's like you have a platform, any financier, anyone who want to avail this facility, he can just plug in, and it is integrating multiple agencies together so that you do onboarding, credit appraisal, disbursement, everything on it. It is like to pinpoint one fintech example, UPI is there, but there are many more. Like if I will just conclude with one more example. Now we were talking about the digitization of the direct benefit that is being given by the government. Now again, we are not stopping at that. Now we have a facility wherein we can do this direct DBT with a specific it's direction DBT. Like you can issue that particular subsidy or the support with a specific requirement that okay, it can be used only at the hospitals, it can be used only at PDS, this amount can be used only at the the fertilizer shop. So we have that facility also now available through our digital means.
So, sir, I think we have anything to add? Okay. So, quickly, I do want to open up to the audience to ask questions to the panelists. Before I do that, I just want to drive one last question. I know there is UPI 2 coming, or it's already here, and there is a new roadmap to that. What should the Indian and the global merchants and both the consumers, what should they expect this thing will evolve into in terms of more facilities? So, Amitabh, so why don't you take that, and then we'll open up for questions.
Now, one thing is that UPI 2 or UPI 3.0 is also very called. I don't think we are going to a stage where we can say that it's UPI 3.0. Because why? Because we are not waiting for innovations. to club together and then do big bang sort of thing. We have been adding features continuously over UPI. If you see even our monetary policy statement, I think at least during the year, at least 12 announcements will be related to the feature enhancement of UPI. So it's like it's an ongoing journey. You cannot say that, okay, this is 1.0, 2.0, now 3.2. Nothing like that. It's like we are continuously innovating, we are continuously there. And one more important thing is that we have now sandbox experiment, we have innovation hub in place. And in addition to that, we have everything related to payment system on tap. You miss any entity, if that entity is having any new idea, they can come directly to our department and put forth what they have, and we are ready to approve that. It's like it's an ongoing journey. We might not see UPN 3.0 or 4.0, 2.4 like that.
Understood. Vinay.
Yes, I would like to point out that sandbox that the Reserve Bank of India has made a kind of ecosystem that so many stakeholders and players can come together and innovate together. But I also would like to applaud the merchants. I read a report which said that there has been an increase of 500% in the acceptance of digital payment by merchants from April 2021 to September 2021 during Corona, compared to the period from October 2018 to 2019. That's amazing. One thing is that people are changing their mindset and adapting everything to smartphones, but in fact, like all kind of vendors, as Varda was saying, I assume these are the people who are selling vegetables from those stores in malls. So I really would like to applaud the merchants as well.
Yeah, just to, by the way, give you a context of the merchants, that amounts to about $380 billion in transactions in 2023. So,
It's just to add to the point that Veena made earlier, I mean, here the good news in India is that the regulator is also the businessman in terms of a very progressive, constant change and respond approach. And within this, the dynamic QR, for instance, you're protecting the safety of the biometric identity, even if someone had that in your hand, and still using it for the authorization of the transaction embedded deeper. But the transaction itself, the QR code itself is only talking about the transaction. So at best, the risk is mitigated by only that much of exposure, not the whole bank account and the details.
correct. So, Antonia, your comment on the closing for what this UPI 2.0, 3.0 could look like with the new digital economy that is happening worldwide. And you know what I'm talking about when it comes to all the new systems that are coming in place.
Yes, well, what I hope or what I would wish is that we try to create a system where everyone is included, which means in India, but also beyond, that we eliminate, for example, that people which live in rural areas, that they have access to everything. And it's not all about, it's not all about finance, but it's also about medicine. So in, excuse me. So in India, for example, they have started right now with the telemedicine approaches, where they brought medicine to those 28% which had no access to the people. And I think on a global scale, our goal should be to create this holistic system, which if it's CPI or if it's in the end another system which is much bigger and more global, I believe that that will be the right approach. And maybe if we add to before, I just would like to amplify and say that if you compare to the 80s, 90s, where we had in Bangalore the beginnings of everything, and if we look now on how everything has developed, people are coming back to India. They wanted to go to America to work for Google and everything, but now people are returning because they see the potential which we have in India. So I really believe that with UPI, and I really believe that something is happening right now, and I really believe in the potential. And I think that if we collaborate together over the borders, so with Switzerland and India and all the other countries, we could really fast reach that goal of financial global inclusion. And
Thank you, Antonia. Last, Varda, your comment before I come back. Varda, on the adoption.
I think the fintech adoption rate in India is probably one of the fastest in the whole world. And I think we all see that on a day-to-day basis in the lives that we are living. And we are the second largest on the internet, globally already. So the adoption rate, the digitalization adoption rate for us is phenomenal, and I see that only increasing. I see a lot of innovation and more new technologies coming into play. And as Sir mentioned, right, it's a continuous cycle. There's no UPI 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0. It's a continuous process of adding new features, improving what you're doing. And the Indian entrepreneur today is also adopting to the same kind of innovations that are coming in from the regulatory side as well. We have close to 10,000 startups which are just focused on working in the fintech space. And as and when new innovations and technologies come in, I just see this exploding even further.
Thank you. Thank you again. Again, everyone, please a big round of applause for all our panelists here. I do want to open for one or two questions because we're a little behind. So let me just see if I can get you a mic.
Thank you, and thank you to all the panelists.
Yes.
My question is to you, sir. I think UPI has done a phenomenal job of basically digitizing debit transactions, and I'm looking forward to credit on UPI, which is the next wave. And I think the way I visualize UPI is, it's a ledger entry. At the end of the day, a transaction is two ledger entries between a bank and the merchant and the user. And earlier we were paying a huge rent when it came to digitization only through the Visa MasterCard rails. And UPI is phenomenal, and I think the globe should adopt it because it's just such low cost. We talked about inclusion, and one of the aspects of inclusion that I guess is popularly talked about is poor people or people below a certain income strata. But the part of inclusion that I want to ask you about is inclusion of middle class India, and there particularly women, and for organized financial services, right? I think that's something that me and my company is focused on. And one of the aspects there that we would love for RBI to think about and define a framework for is credit. Most of women in India are in credit terms, either no file or thin file customers, which means that any of the credit bureaus do not have any information about them. But it's also true that most of the women, whether they earn money or not, they are part of a household where money flows and they control money. And they have the time to manage it better. So to encourage women to start taking charge of organized financial decisions for their households, I think could be a great goal for any government or any, and we have seen the impact of it through microfinance. Any households that have where women have taken charge, the entire household and the family, the ecosystem has benefited from it. Middle class India is waiting for this, whether it's mutual fund investing, whether it is buying term insurance, preventing mis-selling of insurance products in the country. There's so much to be done. But credit is the part that I would love to hear your thoughts on. Can RBI be relied upon to come up with a framework that allows somebody to go on a journey of starting with being a no-file customer to taking certain actions that would, or a menu of actions that can be offered to them so that they become a filed customer who can be given credit to. A corollary point to that is digital gold. And I know that RBI shies away from gold because it's an unregulated product. But again, in the context of inclusion, gold can be very powerful.
Can I summarize your question? The question is, will RBI come up with credit on UPI and banking the unbanked?
Yeah, credit on UPI already we have come up with that. So now you can have RuPay card as underlying. That is one thing. And also now we have allowed banks to provide credit facility over UPI transactions. It's like you go to a POS device and then you get the options that, okay, these are the 3 or 6, 9, 12 EMI options that you have. Now we have allowed banks to provide that also. It's a work in progress. Very soon it will be live also. That is one thing. And second thing is that talking of the gender inequality. So I think gender inequality is there across everything, not only on credit or digital payments. And biggest problem with us is that we don't have gender segregated data. That is the biggest problem. And if we have also, it is not giving the right picture. As you were telling that the women she is in charge of everything in the household. But the account is in the name of men. So that is one thing. Now, talking of low file or low file customer, like the example you gave for women. Now we are working on, as I was telling, we now have a platform for digital financing, and that will take care of all these things. Means it will help. It will not take care. It will be a too bold statement. It will help in it because here you are not only relying on the credit data which is available or the banking behavior of that person. It takes care of the say the land record. It takes care of your in case of say dairy loan, then it takes care of how much milk is produced. It also includes the satellite data which takes care of the crop area that is under the name of that the person. So I think all these are innovation in that direction. But specific to that, whether RBI will come up with a specific instruction related to women, I think I would not be able to tell you yes or no to that because that is a very larger question and view needs to be taken at a much higher level.
So I do want to continue this panel, but we have a time bound on our live stream. I know our panelists will be around to answer questions, and please take that opportunity to ask them personally. But again, thank you so much for being a great audience. Again, a big round of applause to all our panelists and the conversation again. Thank you so much, and we will continue our conversations in the next panel.
Thank you. Let's go, Janet.